Judge Shawn Fry, a circuit court judgment in the criminal division here in the 13th Judicial District in Tennessee. And a lot of our viewers, Shawn, could have been prior clients, people that are interested in following our family and our law firm. And so they're folks that maybe have seen your family. Obviously, you're an elected official and might know of you, but many don't. They have no idea. And it's specifically the criminal justice system. Most people haven't actually had involvement in that, And
That's
so.
right.
I'd like to start off, Shawn, by this kind of, people are always so interested, why do people become lawyers and who goes into that? And what was kind of your why, if you zoom back to, post-college, that you went into law school in this profession?
I never had any intention whatsoever of being a lawyer, and I can trace it back to one statement that my sister made to me. I was graduating at Tennessee Tech here, and she had a legal dispute with somebody, and she was trying to find a lawyer, and she said, you ought to go to law school. And it was the first time anybody had ever suggested that to me. And, it was the early 90s, and there was a little bit of a recession at that point in time. And I thought, well, you know what, maybe I could go to law school.
Yeah.
And I can trace it back to that one comment. If she hadn't have ever made that comment to me, I would have never went to law school. And I never had any intention of ever going to law school.
What were you majoring in at that time? Like, what were you considering?
Well, I was considering business.
Yep.
I wanted to go in the business
Yep.
world, and
Yep.
I wanted to own my own business.
Yeah.
And that was the direction I was going. And like I said, it was a recession a bit at that time.
Yeah.
So I went the other direction, and I just got out of college, and I thought, well, I'll try law school.
Yeah, it's so funny. I had similar background. I wanted to commission on to active duty. I was an ROTC graduate. 2008 to 12, they were downsizing our force. I got commissioned into the Army Reserve, and I was well suited for it. But it's just so funny. A lot of times it is just one interaction or a conversation or a life event. You're like, I can do it, which is really interesting. You were already very independent minded. You were interested in business and, entrepreneurship and ownership and those things, which interestingly enough, correct me if I'm wrong, pretty quickly after law school, you did go into business for yourself, owning a law firm with Dawn, your wife.
When I was in law school, I interned at the DA's office first.
Okay. Here in the 13th district.
Here in this district.
Yeah.
And that was very valuable because I got to participate in some form of a trial in 13 jury trials. And when I graduated law school, I first went to the district attorney's office. I was an assistant DA there for an additional 2 years. And then went into practice with my wife and Steve Qualls, who is now the General Sessions Judge here in Cookeville. We went to law school together, and I remember when I decided I was going to leave the DA's office, I just called him up on the phone and said, hey, I'm thinking about leaving. You feel like going into business together? And he said, yeah. He was getting about that stage as well. So we started and finished law school together. We spent the summer down in Knoxville studying for the bar exam, pre-internet days when you had to actually go and physically be present, and lived in Knoxville that summer. And
Can we just pause there?
Yeah.
Like, what was that like? I mean, it was horrible for us too, and whenever we were studying for the bar all summer, but we had Barbary and online software that self-paced you through everything. You took quizzes every day. I mean, what was it like? Were you just completely like, go study? Or was there Kaplan? Like, what did you do?
Well, back in that day, they had a bar review course, same as what they do now.
Yeah.
But you had to physically be present for it.
Oh, okay.
There was some internet, but the streaming times and videos, you couldn't do a video. Nothing live like we have Zoom now because the video streams were so slow. So you had to go and be physically present. And we lived at the Knoxville dorms in Knoxville, and it was miserable. We would leave Cookeville on a Sunday evening. Steve had a wife and children.
Wow.
I had no children. Dawn and I were married.
Yeah.
But you would leave home on a Sunday evening, drive to Knoxville. We lived down there and came home on Fridays. We'd come home for 2 days and then go back. And you did that all summer.
That's really rare too, that you had a colleague and a friend, and now you're both just how the careers unfolded. I knew you were in business together. I didn't know you went to law school. And so a couple of years after, you open up your firm. And one of the reasons why I was really interested in interviewing you, I know a good portion of your practice, the majority of your practice, most of the practice was in criminal defense, I guess in private practice, right?
Right.
And, and how long was that, Shawn, that you were a private practitioner?
25 years. I was 2 years at the DA's office, 25 years in private practice.
And I can say this because I watched you have a couple of trials that I see in court when I was a public defender, and just see practitioners in the private bar that were handling cases. And I know you had many trials from your times in private practice. I saw you handle a rape case a few years ago, here in Putnam County, and just did a fantastic job. The public has got so many, and I found this out when I worked for the public. I'm a very conservative person. I'm a Christian. I'm devout in that. And I felt like in that season, God really had called me to represent, the indigent people that are truly on the margins of society, and many times that have done very disgusting things. But I think the public really has stereotypes, and I know you did it for 25 years, on why we have the rights we have, and what the real role is of the criminal defense attorney in our criminal justice system. I don't know if you just want to kind of give your view on that, to kind of help people. People say, how can you do that? How can you represent someone who took human life and all that? And you might have had to address that before.
Yes, I had a murder trial or two, and they never went to trial. They resolved.
Yeah.
But some of the other cases, the same as what you say. Some people in the general public will say, "Well, how can you represent such a person?" Well, it's easy. You're defending their constitutional rights, and they have the right to have good representation. And in doing it, you'll be a little surprised at how somebody's constitutional rights get violated, whether it's a search and seizure issue, a statement issue, a Miranda issue. You've also seen situations where somebody gets kind of overcharged. What they're really charged with, they may be guilty of something, but they're not really charged with guilty of what they're charged with, and they're overcharged. And that happens quite a bit. That's pretty frequent. So, representing somebody and defending them in their constitutional rights, that's really easy.
That's an easy answer. And again, it's just the gatekeeping of the Constitution that people forget. There's large swaths of even Eastern Europe and in greater parts of the Western world that these rights against the Fourth Amendment against unreasonable seizures, the right to counsel, the right to present those charges against you don't exist. And that's why we have those rights here. And overcharging is very common, right? That doesn't mean that our police officers and our deputies are not competent and they're becoming more professional as the years go on. But that's why we have counsel, right? To make sure that justice is evenly distributed. Right?
Yeah, and the system works best when both sides are well represented. The prosecution team, they're well trained, and when you have a good trained prosecutor and you have a good defense attorney, that's when you have the best results. I mean, that's how the system is supposed to work.
Yeah. And again, with good counsel, it can work, and with good judges, which kind of brings me to your path to the bench here. Has it been 2 years? Or
almost right at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, that was help me out here. The judge's seat that you filled.
It was a brand new seat.
It's a new seat. I knew it wasn't Judge Patterson. That was with. Yeah. Okay.
It was
We've got 3 criminal judges now.
Yes, it was a brand new spot that was created based on the volume of cases that have been in this district. And this district is 7 counties.
Yes.
So it's not just Putnam; it's the surrounding 7 counties. And it was a new spot, and I applied for it, and luckily got appointed by Governor Lee.
One of the things I know that the bar was really happy to see was that there's a little bit more representation from someone who had a background in defense work, also had a background as a prosecutor for a few years too. But to round out kind of the experience, not that I won't say it's a problem or anything like that. We have really great judges here, and I'm not just saying that. Our bar knows that when you leave the 13th district, all of a sudden things can be very different in a criminal court or a circuit court or chancery court, and so we've gotten a little spoiled here. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, how has your background as a defense attorney helped you view things a little bit differently now that you're in this neutral role as a judge?
Well, I think it's helped me a great deal. And when I was at the prosecutor's office, I had a great time there. And I spent 2 years interning, 2 years as a prosecutor, and then of course 25 years in defense work. But having done both sides, we have seen, I know you know this, but there are many lawyers who have only done one thing. And maybe it's only prosecution, maybe it's only defense work. And they kind of get a little tunnel vision and don't see the bigger picture. And I think being a prosecutor and a defense attorney both, I think it's really helped me, because there are many times I see the prosecution side. And, at the same time, I had a hearing yesterday, and a prosecutor was arguing something that I thought was way off keen there. And the defense attorney was, more accurate in that aspect. just from being able to see the bigger picture. So I think being on both sides has really helped me a great deal.
And that makes a lot of sense. It's actually not just that you did 25 years as a defense attorney, but you also were part of charging decisions and indictments and leading trials as a prosecutor, even though it was for a briefer time. You saw both, and that's the big difference.
Yes, and I saw enough on that side that I wanted to go into private practice.
Yeah, it is so rigorous. I only did, I guess, 18 months there under Craig Fickling, and before I went in with the very similar path he went into private practice, with my wife, and it can be a brutal. To do a good job, you've really got to be on 24/7.
Well, yes, and in a year and a half, didn't you get like 20 years of experience? Because you're thrown right in, and you have so much volume. You got 20 years of experience in a year and a half.
It truly does. When I was there, I'm like, was that really all that I was there towards? Like, yeah, I saw. I'm like, man, but yeah, jury trials abounded. I had 3 or 4. I sat second chair on several with some really good defense attorneys in different counties in our district, and it was a great experience. Even though now I'm more a civil practitioner, and even as a transactional attorney, I'm still in a state litigation. I was today on some motion hearings, and that experience has been tremendous for me, just in general as a foundation. One of the questions we get before we interview a guest, depending on what are they an elected official, are they a business owner? Criminal justice reform, the criminal justice system. This is something I actually asked Judge McKenzie. It's been well over a year now, and there may have been updates in the law, but the Truth in Sentencing Act and truth in sentencing in general. Can you kind of give an elevator overview for the public on, number one, why that legislation came to be and what it did and what it does?
Yes, and let me tell you what that's the big topic, and is the 100% sentencing. The truth in sentencing is where somebody serves 100%
of their sentence. Yeah.
And the aspect of really kind of how it came about is because of the way the parole system is. When you have a 30% sentence, somebody gets 12 years at 30%, which reduces it significantly. Then they get some good time behavior credits and those kind of things. And somebody, a 12-year sentence sounds like a long time, and they're out in only 2.
Yeah.
And the truth in sentencing was to do so that when you said, hey, you're going to serve this time, it's at 100%. You know exactly how much time it is.
Number one, also the defendant knows, which is not probably the most important aspect of that. The victim knows, the family knows, but also the defendant himself knows when he's what is going to happen when he pleads.
Exactly. And you know exactly what it is, because on the other ones where truth in sentencing don't apply in the parole system, sometimes we all shake our heads and wonder, well, how'd they get out so fast?
Yeah.
They paroled out quicker, and there's no way to predict that ahead of time.
Yeah. And why don't we just kind of give a sampling of some of the new crimes that are now under, because I actually don't know myself, that are under this umbrella of the truth in sentencing, violent crimes, I'm presuming. Mm-hmm. But what were some of those that were added in? Of course, murder, and some of the things were already there, 85%, 100%. What were some things that were added, that were included now?
Oh, well, lots of them. I've got a folder that's got 3 pages of listing. Okay. But they're almost all violent crimes.
All the child sex crimes, things like that, are included there. Rape and all, and the underlying charges, are those also included? Yes,
and some of the aspects, of pictures and being on the internet and getting pictures that you shouldn't be having. Those things are 100% crimes now, where they were just 30% crimes before. Okay. Some of the violent offenses, repeat drug offenders. I did one today in Pickett County. Yeah. A convicted felon with a handgun. That's 100% now. And those were 30% crimes before, and now they're 100%.
And that's the thing. Some of them were violent in nature, and they were not. Nowhere close to being 85 or 100% sentences. So essentially, most of the B and C felony drug offenses, those are still under that umbrella. For better or for worse, those are still parole-oriented, those types of felony offenses. But all those sexual and violent crimes, vast majority of them were moved into that.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And on the drug offenses, now if you're a repeat offender, now they're 100%. So if you've had 2 prior convictions and you get your 3rd one, now your 3rd one's 100%.
And I know that you are a judge, and you will obviously are bound as a true neutral arbiter of justice and the law, both statutory law, case law, all of those things. What is your opinion on that, though? I mean, the overall legislation, as far as public policy, maybe the hidden things that maybe it does impact, like overcrowding in prisons, or maybe it doesn't do that, but what are some of the critiques, and what is your position on it?
That's a good question. And, before I was judge, I would say to you with 100% sentencing, no leeway, that's great. Now that I become judge, you run into some weird situations every now and then that don't really fit, but they're at 100% and you have no leeway whatsoever, no discretion.
Yeah.
And so I guess now that I'm judge, I kind of don't like
some of it
losing the discretion, because you have weird facts sometimes in a court.
Absolutely.
That suddenly now it qualifies as a 100% offense, and you are like, this one really shouldn't fit, but you don't have any discretion.
And how is this impacting negotiations with counsel? I can only imagine the nightmare that's causing.
Yes, that's causing a lot of issues there. But, those kind of issues kind of work themselves out. Sometimes when you do have those weird facts, hopefully the prosecutor, the defense attorney, a good defense attorney, they negotiate that and come to some sort of resolution. And the public hears about plea agreements all the time. Well, lots of times that's a good thing. The attorney sat down, the defense attorney sat down, they've talked, they've negotiated, they've exchanged information, and they've come up with something that's a fair plea agreement.
That was agreed to by both sides. I always thought that was unfair, this whole idea that only a tiny speck of criminal cases go to trial, that somehow like there's not transparency and it's not allowed. It's just like the civil side. The public needs to understand that maybe even less, I don't know, but there is only a tiny amount of civil cases. When I have a will contest or a partition suit or something like that is filed in Chancery Court, the chances of it actually going in front of a jury of our peers is fairly slim. And the reason why is two human beings represented by agents at some point in that litigation process can agree on something that's submitted to a judge to sign as part of the settlement. And so I think people do need to understand that. It's not that people don't have the right. They absolutely do, and they get those rights all the time in front of you and the other judges.
Well, and that's exactly right. We had a very serious offense that back in March that we had a trial on, and it took about 11 months to get from the time it was charged through sessions all the way to a jury trial.
Yep.
And that was fast.
Very.
That's very fast in our world, and that's the way it should be. One of the goals that we had on having a new judge is to try to speed that process up and have at least availability for more trials, so that when the attorneys cannot resolve it, we can go ahead and get a trial date. Let's get one quick, and let's resolve it. And we had another trial, jury trial here just last week, I think, with a second-degree murder. Jury came back not guilty.
Yeah, and once again, that's how our civic process works. That's how it works, and it is working. Local concerns. People. I was in court this morning. I had no idea the methadone case was on the docket. That was interesting to hear the arguments for both and against that. And drugs are a huge problem in our society, which is leading to violence. I mean, I think most reasonable people can agree on that. What are the biggest issues? I mean, of course, you've been in the criminal justice system representing defendants for many, many years, but I mean, and even your time now as a judge, what are the biggest things that you're seeing that is a concern in our local communities as far as crimes that are on the uptick or that are a real concern? Is it drugs? Do we see there's more murders happening in the 13th Judicial District, or is there any reports just for the public?
It's almost always drugs and alcohol. And alcohol being a legal drug is maybe the most prevalent. If it wasn't for drugs and alcohol, the docket would be significantly less. Yeah. And of course, get into a little realm of politics. People and drugs have been flowing across the border to where drugs have become cheap by comparison to what they were a few years ago. And of course, I think there's new enforcement now at the border that's kind of cutting some of that down. Now, there will be lag time before we see the results of that.
Yeah.
But drugs are just so prevalent. They're just everywhere, and they're not hard to find, and they're relatively cheap. And then alcohol. I'm old enough to know the time when you could not buy alcohol in Putnam County.
Wow.
You always had to go to Jackson County to buy liquor. Now it is just so easy to get to. And there's nothing wrong with somebody having a responsible drink.
Yep. But it's the access and the prevalence that alcohol has saturated our society, and so have drugs. Yeah, and speaking of fentanyl and those things, I'm an Army reservist, and oh man, I think we had three. I was in a medical brigade, I just transferred out of it, but in Nashville, we had 3 junior soldiers overdose on fentanyl in like 12 months. And just suddenly. It is, our young people are taking much harder drugs. It's just not just marijuana and alcohol and that people partake in college and their youthful years. It is progressing into opiates and other things because the cost of it and the accessibility, right?
Yes, because of the accessibility and the cost. You're exactly right. It's easy to find and it's not that expensive. And then you're taking something, you don't even know what you're taking.
Yeah. And then someone's dead,
And then someone's dead.
Yeah. What are the, I don't know, we've had treatment programs for a while now. I know I helped enter into some of those for clients briefly when I was in doing defense work. Are those programs expanding? And most importantly, are you seeing them work successfully? Whether it's inpatient treatment options and things like that. Is that the answer? We've got incarceration, which is oftentimes the answer. We've got treatment options. Sometimes there's a blend as part of plea agreements. But are those programs expanding, and should they?
Well, yes, they should. And
Okay.
we're trying to expand those programs. And Judge McKenzie has had the Veterans and Drug Court for years.
Yeah.
And I've come on board, and we're now trying to expand that. We've split the docket with our drug court. There are also other available drug treatment programs. And, over the years, we've had some great successes.
Yeah.
Where people who are good people, who are honest people, but have an addiction issue.
We know it impacts our profession. We've had
Yes.
colleagues and peers, right?
Oh my gosh, lawyers! I mean,
Yeah.
how much do you see in our profession?
Yeah.
So, but they go get treatment and they do better, and they're good, productive citizens, and that's what we really want to strive for with everyone. Who has an alcohol or drug addiction, and we need to be expanding those programs because throwing somebody in jail is not the answer. It costs the taxpayers money, and they're not getting any treatment in the jail. Now, so we want to try to expand those programs everywhere we can. Now, obviously, it doesn't work for everybody, and there have been many failures too. And some people try to focus on the failures and say, well, this person didn't make it, so why are we sending people to treatment? Well, because people who do make it. There are times that we turn people around, their lives come around, we reunite families, and that's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of drugs. Our securities and police do a great job, but there are access to drugs even in our penal institutions, right? And so, again, if you've got a first-time felony offender that has made a big mistake, there can be a lot of redemption there if they can do it.
It has to be the right person.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and I hear in the community sometimes, well, if they wanted help, they should have done it before they got in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes somebody needs the motivation of, hey, do you want to go to treatment or you want to go to prison? Which one you want? And suddenly that motivates them to go get treatment. And once they get that treatment, they do well and they stay out of trouble. We had a great one just this week of a young man who went to Teen Challenge and came in and always asked how did things go. And he talked about how it was a faith-based program, and he's turned his life around. He's reunited with his family. And you think to yourself, wow, that's great.
A life that was saved.
Correct. And right before I came here, I signed an order for somebody who left treatment, ran from it, and I've signed a warrant for their arrest.
Right.
So you have some that don't make it, and but it's still worth putting forth the effort. We can't afford to throw them all in jail. It costs taxpayers a fortune.
No.
And for those that we can get on the right path, we need to try to do that extra effort to do that to help them.
That's why I think the truth in sentencing, I'm out of representing defendants largely now in my current practice for now, that I'm excited about because we want to be safe. We are seeing assassinations. We are seeing more violent crime. Maybe not in our local community. We're in a good community, but in general, we saw a decline from the 90s and early 2000s to now we're seeing it go up. And it's like we need strong laws to protect our citizenry. We also need to have redemption in our society and there's not enough place. We need to have a healthy society, and speaking of faith, Teen Challenge, a faith-based program, and I know, Shawn, that you're a man of faith, and how has your faith, how does it guide you as a judge? I'm sure it's different from when you were a practitioner too.
Well, and it is hard and sometimes because might be immoral is not illegal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
struggling with that some. But, you know, it really grounds you, I think, from an aspect of still trying to help people. There are those who are dangerous offenders, just like what you say.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who are dangerous, well, there's a jail down here.
Right.
We built a great big new one.
Yeah.
And they need to be there, unfortunately. We all of us out here need protection from those people. For those that we don't need protection from, well, maybe we can do some other type of treatment program. But, you know, some of the treatment programs that I've seen where they've got some emptiness in their heart and they go to treatment, and a faith-based program has been very successful, you know, because they've got to get that something filling their heart other than the drugs and the alcohol, and it's been very successful that way. You know, so I've had some really good success with that over the years, and I think being a Christian really helps you in that regard. Keeps you grounded. You know, many people in our profession have some difficulties and substance abuse issues. I've stayed away from all those. I've stayed well grounded. Being married 32 years, those things will keep you well grounded.
Amen. And you know, I actually came, you know, back to Christ as an adult. Was raised in a very great home in the Church of Christ, and had an upbringing that really fell away. And sure enough, when you do have that emptiness, things feel that void, like alcohol and drugs and other immoral behavior. And when someone turns in the right way, those things can dissipate. And that's part of the reasons why I think we see with Generation Z and the youth, whether it's SSRIs and other types of drugs, which makes some of that house maybe warranted, but just the amount of drugs that is being pumped into our youth now, it's just, in my opinion, more of an indictment that there is just, and I'm not trying to sound hopeless. I think that the church could see a revival, and it is actually, but that's going to be a big part of what can turn this next generation around. Because really, the fight against drugs is a spiritual war at some point on that individual level. That is why those actions are taken to a point where now they've got a felony charge and they're facing 8 to 12 years in a cage, you know, and so. And our profession too, you know, part of the thing is, I know when I was in law school not that long ago, you know, 7 years ago, me and Tori really felt like we were some of the only people really of faith, or you know, that may have had a conservative background even. I don't know why that is. I think some of it is what leads some teachers into academia, and why that is in our profession, that there's such a disparity of people that might not have faith. I don't know, but you see the levels of drugs too. One thing I did want to ask you about, Shawn, you know, of course, the Charlie Kirk assassination last week has impacted our nation. You know, really, I guess the biggest martyr since Martin Luther King, you know, Jr. And you've got a person that was shot exercising his right to free speech, doing really what his mission statement was, and sharing the gospel and things, and he loses his life in that way. What, you know, people look to our elected leaders and our judges and our leaders in these times, you know, for a message and for peace. And what is kind of your thoughts on that, that you would share to our viewers?
Well, you know, the Charlie Kirk assassination, it was horrible because it was captured on camera. And in a YouTube day and age, internet day and age, anybody that wanted to see the uncensored act, it was free to do so. Yeah. And it was right there. And, you know, free speech is one of those things, I'm telling you what, in our nation today, with things, the disagreements that there are, there's always been disagreements. Yeah. Back to when George Washington was president. Yeah. You know, but the viciousness with them now. You know, the thing about free speech that is so hard to sometimes defend, and I know you know this for others, is that there have been plenty of times I've defended somebody on some aspect of free speech. I didn't like their speech. Of course. And I didn't like their lifestyle. But we live in a country where they have the right to do so. Yeah. And it's hard to sometimes defend somebody in the freedom of speech aspect when you don't like the speech. But if you start suppressing their speech, and then you're suppressing any and all speech, you know, what speech will be next. And if you don't like what Charlie Kirk said, you know, turn the other cheek, or you're free to speak your side as well. But get to the viciousness of shooting over free speech. It's just, it's terrible what happened in that situation.
Yeah, it really is. I think that people who have not studied, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and the First Amendment law, sometimes we're really focused on the Second Amendment, which is critical to enforce the First Amendment, right? But the First Amendment, if it falls, everything else is a domino effect all around it. And you see now that there's even on the right too attempts to censor speech and to censor now hate speech, and that is not a good thing in my view. We have the free marketplace of ideas. That's one of the greatest things about X, and what Musk did there to hold that for the general public. There's of course other more fringe platforms that people aren't on, but to have that open debate on the marketplace, and Charlie Kirk did it in person, which really no one has done to a successful extent, to have civil discourse face to face with the youth. And it is just a scary thing to see that even some of our leaders are actually looking to censor speech that is disgusting, but is going to lead. Where does that end, right?
Yes, and especially on political views. There are plenty of people I differ with on their political views, but they should have the right to express that political view. And even if I disagree with it, I don't need to shoot them over it. It's just you just wonder where we're going in this nation in that regard.
Yeah, and of course, you just hope people can distemper and hopefully evolve from this to have more discourse and more peaceful discourse, and hopefully our country can move forward and bolster the First Amendment. We pray, right? Shawn, one of the things kind of as we wrap up, there's a lot of folks that are, I own a law firm. We have a lot of employees. Some are paralegals, some are interested in law school and things like that. You've now had a career coming up on, I guess, 30 years as an attorney, right? What would be your advice to the youth today that are coming out of college on how they should weigh their decision on going to law school and entering into the profession of law?
Well, listen, to be honest about some things, the aspect of me in going to law school, I'm no smarter than anybody else.
Yeah.
I wasn't a scholar in high school. In college, but the one thing I did was work hard. And if I see one aspect of things today, everybody wants something that's easy. I would tell people to, one of the advices that we got, you probably got this same advice in law school, that if you work hard, you'll stay sober, you'll make a pretty good living. And I've managed to do that. And you would think that that's something that would be easy, but boy, in today's generation, as we've talked about, keeping sober, with so many temptations out there, and working hard, just working hard. When nothing's coming to you for free, wake up early in the morning, work, and if you want it, you need to earn it. I just think working hard is one of those aspects of, that maybe is today's generation. And of course, that always happens as you get older too. You think the younger generation isn't working hard enough. But I would think that would be one of the aspects, is working hard and staying out of trouble.
Working hard. One of the things I think that's great advice. And one of the things that someone told me once, I had a coach. I lost my starting position in one season. I was just so stunned by such an act, and he just kind of looked at me and said, "Your hard is not hard. What you think is hard is not actually hard." Like sometimes people have to assess what does hard work look like, and that might mean shadowing a private law firm where they have someone that they want to emulate. What does their life look like? What was hard work? Was it 60-hour weeks, or was it 32 with 2 days off for working virtually from home? I think they have to really reassess that. Shawn, is there anything else you'd like to cover today?
Well, listen, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate everything you do and some of the interviews you're doing with others, so that other individuals, myself and others, can come out and give their viewpoints, and others get to see it. Appreciate you doing the interview.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, thank you for your thoroughness and answering.
All right. Thank you so much.